Hey everybody, it's Natalie Antonov again with Gable Music Ventures. We're here with another interview. We want to bring you closer to the people that can help you as musicians get closer to your goals. Today we have with us Meredith Tarr. Meredith Tarr has propelled her way through the business side of the music industry. She's hosted Wild Woman Radio at WNHU, University of New Haven. She's done music writing for small publications and magazines. She was a house concert presenter, co-director of the New Haven Folk Festival, or rather now known as the Connecticut Folk Festival, and is now tour manager for Rachael Sage, as well as working in event production, A&R, label promotions, all at MPress Records. So let's get into it with Meredith. Hey Meredith, how you doing today?
I'm all right. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, just fine. I'm really excited to talk to you today. Thank you for coming on with me.
No, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get started here. You are, just to be clear, not a touring musician. You have been mainly on the business side of the music industry, correct?
Yeah, I make music happen, but I don't make the music.
That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it. How did you go from being a music fan to carving a place for yourself in a music career?
I think it started just from being a useful fan, like towing that line between, being that kind of fan that artists and bands like to have around and not being creepy about it. It's a fine line. But it started where, I would just go to shows, and I'm mainly into artists that aren't that well known. So I go to small shows where you can talk to the artist afterwards and get to know them a little bit and, help out with the merch table, and then end up helping out with the mailing list. And then that expanded to, here, let me do your website, or let me host your listserv, your fan listserv. And that expanded out to, my tour manager's going away for a while. Can you help me out on weekends? To, call me if you ever want to get into the music business. It just kind of went, over the course of about 5 or 6 years, it just sort of expanded that way, kind of organically.
That's really cool. It just kind of like grows, and one thing leads to another. Do you find yourself, I'm curious, accepting opportunities because they were being given to you, or seeking things out more?
I didn't really seek much of anything out. It just sort of happened. I realized that I could be helpful in many ways. And so when one of my very favorite artists, a really obscure Canadian named Veda Hilly, was looking for a place to play in Connecticut, I was like, you know what, my living room's big enough, come play here. And then, 10 years later, I had been doing this big house concert series, or, a friend of mine and I decided that we were sick of having to go down to New York to see our favorite artists. So we were going to have a festival in Danbury and bring the artists to us. And then we got to know people that way, and I got to know people that way. And so folks would just come to me and say, hey, can you help me with this? And I would just say yes, And so I ended up getting to work with some of my favorite artists that way. Like I did Dar Williams' website for a while, and I did like the Neil's website for a while. And, it just got to, and my first tour managing gig was with Susan Werner, who's one of my all-time favorites. And so it just sort of really just went to people coming to me for help and me being like, yeah, sure, I can do that.
Yes. It's kind of like yes man, but yes woman.
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, really, the only opportunity I ever sought out was getting in touch with Rachael Sage, because she had come to one of my house concerts as a fan after I had presented her a couple times. And she just said, hey, if you ever want to get into the business, call me. And one day I was just sick of my 9-to-5 job. And so I just dropped her a line, and it just happened to be good timing.
And now we're here.
And now we're here. Oh yeah. Yeah. So 16 years later, we're here.
Yeah, no, that's you've been there for a while, and you wear many hats at MPress Records, which was it was founded by Rachael, right?
Yeah. Rachael started the label to put out her own music, and over the years it's grown from there.
So what do you do there? What are the many things you do? Can you round that up for us and kind of explain how they work with each other?
Sure. Well, I was just Rachel's tour manager. So I was just, taking the band out on the road and all of that. And over time, as we started signing other artists, the first artist we signed was Seth Gleer, and we met him because he was opening for her. Mm-hmm. And we both our minds were just completely blown. And we ended up, and Rachel ended up signing him. And so from there, it was sort of like, oh, well, I kind of have an A&R role now. And I had already been doing Rachel's website at that point, and it kind of expanded to, well, this is like label promotions because I'm helping get the word out about things that are going on. And then, as we signed more artists, the roles just grew, but I kept on being Rachel's tour manager because she's still going out on the road. And I realized that, I can do stuff from anywhere. So, we get back to the hotel at night, I can check my email and, help out with label things. And when we're off the road, then I focus on label things. And then, at one point, Rachel found herself between booking agents, and I realized that I have all these contacts from touring and also from attending industry conferences and putting on our events, because I had event production experience from the house concerts and the festivals and stuff. And it's sort of just all is one big, I don't know even what to call it, but it all is tied together, and so, I don't really carve anything to like, okay, well, this hour of this day I'm doing this, and then I'm going to do that. It's just all mixed up together because it is all connected.
Right. Right. And I think out of all the different roles that you do, the one that most people, I think, aren't quite sure either what it means or what you do in that role, but can you explain A&R a little bit?
A&R is an old school term for artist and repertoire. And, in the major labels, A&R people would be the ones that would go out and seek the new talent and sign it, and then kind of, shepherd them through the whole process. In my case, I think it focuses more on the repertoire than the artists, because we're all working with the artists. I mean, we're such a small shop that we're all doing a lot of the same stuff. But how I see A&R is, I'll be helping to vet demos. Like, oh, I think this song, these 5 songs out of these 10 that you sent, you should definitely put it on your next album. Or, I think this would be a really great single. Or, I think you should sequence the album this way. I really love album sequencing. I think that goes back to my radio days, and plus my mixtape days back in college. I really into that. So I help with that. And then it comes down to even just the granular stuff. Like, I proofread the liner notes before they go to the manufacturer. Like, and I help artists write their bio and things, but I focus a lot on the music that is going to be going out. And I don't by any means do this all by myself, but I kind of have like a point person role as far as that goes.
That's cool. That's a pretty I guess I don't know if the word intimate is right, but it's a very close role with the artist. Like you kind of like live with them, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And, as a label, we are all about the artist. And I think, we give the artists a lot of control. We're here to help them. And our term that we use is meaningfully consult. But, at the end of the day, we want the artist's vision to be the one that gets out there. And we're just, helping guide them along the way. So, if they have a Dropbox with 20 demos, but they know that they're only going to want to record 10 or 12 of them, they're going to look to us to help them winnow that down. And so I can really listen with the ear from the fan's perspective and the listener's perspective and the critic's perspective and the radio person's perspective, and try to come at it from that angle of like, you personally may think that this song is the one, but I actually think it's this one. So maybe go back and listen to that one again, that kind of thing.
Kind of bringing all your background and experience into that decision gives you a different viewpoint than, somebody who's been working on it from the inside out kind of thing.
I think so. Years ago, a friend of mine who's also kind of a professional music fan said to me, he said, the artist is the least qualified to view their own work.
Sure.
And in some ways, I think that's true. I mean, you need to, really have sort of an outside perspective and not just be right there in it. And I've gotten myself into trouble with some artists for, telling them that.
Really?
I'm like, you know what? You're too close to it. Mm-hmm. I really think you're not coming at this from the right perspective. But for the most part, at the end of the day, they realized that, it was the right decision.
Sure. You're only trying to help them make the best choice for that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're looking out for them. That's kind of the job.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not telling them how to produce their record,
Sure.
But I will give mixed feedback if they're open to it and they send it to me. I love doing that. I'll give mastering feedback like, hey, I think there's not enough of a gap between these two tracks, or, hey, on my stereo system, these tracks aren't at the same level. I mean, I'm happy to do that. And I do that, and it's fun.
That's cool. So we've talked a little bit about what record labels do for artists. Other than what you've said, is there anything else they do for the artists? And also, is there stuff that people think record labels do for artists that they don't actually do?
I mean, I think the main thing that a label does, especially now, is our job is to get the music out there in the world and make sure that people know about it. So, we're also the project managers for it all. So, we have worldwide distribution deal. So we take the record and help get it done. And then when it's done, we get it out in the world, but we also help the artists put their team together for the marketing and promotion. So, we'll help them find their publicist, their radio promoter, or their digital marketing people if they need that. Mm-hmm. And, we help get the team together that's going to get the word out about this record. And then whatever the artist is doing on their end, online, we'll amplify that on our own socials. And then when the artist is out touring, whenever that can happen again, we make sure that they have products with them so that they can sell. Sometimes we do get involved in helping with merchandising, setting up, getting merch done. It varies, but that's something that we do. Another thing we do is we try to get licensing happening. We try to get syncs done, get the music into libraries. And if someone does want to use a track, they have to come to us for the master side of it. And we help, to make sure that the artist is getting everything to the person that wants to sync it in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. One thing that we don't do that people might think we do is artist management. We don't do that. But we will, try to introduce an artist to somebody if we think there's a good connection or whatever. And another thing that we do that a lot of other labels do is we put on events, like showcase events, like at South by Southwest and Folk Alliance and things like that, so that the artist has a place to showcase their talents, and get connections made that way. So there's a lot a label can do. It's all about, you know, building the team and coordinating the team and being a part of the team.
Sure.
Yeah, because an artist, I mean, yeah, plenty of artists do the full DIY thing, but you know, you talk to them offline and you find that most of them are like, oh God, I don't have time to actually be an artist.
Right.
So we're here to do whatever we can to make sure that the artist has the maximum amount of time to be an artist and make their art and get out there and present it to the world.
Absolutely. And when it comes to touring, that would be under the purview mainly of who in the I guess in the world,
in the ecosystem.
I couldn't think of the word. I couldn't think of the ecosystem. So it's not like you go out and you do all the booking and all that kind of stuff.
No, the only reason that I'm involved with that is just because I was already doing that with Rachael. I mean, there are legal services companies that provide different types of services, like a la carte, you know, they're more of the 360 deal type things. But in general, you know, an artist will have their own separate booking agent or do it themselves. But that'll be something that's completely on the artist side.
Right.
For sure.
Got it. And then, okay, yeah. So then the publishing, you guys kind of do kind of the publishing part of that as well, or sort of. I mean, you do distribution. That's the difference than the publishing.
We don't do publishing. That is completely on the artist. Our involvement is with the recordings and the master recordings.
Got it.
The compositions and the publishing, that's all on the artist side. So we don't get involved in the publishing at all.
Got it.
I mean, some labels they'll have deals with their artists where they take a cut of the publishing.
Okay.
But it's just completely that's all on the artist side, the composer side.
And that's, so the record label does X, Y, and Z, and then on the artist side, they should have, for example, a manager, like a manager,
ideally,
type person, and probably a business manager type person.
Ideally, if they're at that level, yeah.
And then they're publishers, and then do you see any other pieces of that puzzle other than the record label?
Yeah, I mean, on the artist side, they'll ideally have management. But I mean, we've worked with artists that didn't have management as well. They manage themselves. There's pros and cons to both, and it really comes down to each artist's individual situation. But it's ideal to have a manager because, again, it's, you know, to give you time to be an artist. You know, your manager can handle these day-to-day things for you. Right. The business manager, the folks I know that have business managers tend to be more established. You know, a lot of, you know, most DIY artists can just put QuickBooks on their laptop and handle it themselves. Booking agent is key. That's really important to have somebody to set up your tours for you, because it's so time consuming to do it yourself. I mean, you know, you literally end up in a situation where you're on one tour planning the next at the same time, and not a lot of artists can handle all of that at the same time, you know.
You do need that time to work on your work and focus on bringing your 100% to the performances. And Right.
And if an artist has a tour manager, that's something else that they handle on their end too. You know, once again, that's something like, you know, for a lot of artists I've met, the tour manager is the first team member they actually bring on, because they realize that they can't put on a good show if they've spent 8 hours in the car driving to it already that day. And, you know, I mean, it takes a lot out of you. And if you're, you know, if you have to drive 8 hours to the gig and play for an hour and a half and not start till 10, but then you have to get up at 8 the next morning to drive 6 hours to your next gig, I mean, how long can you sustain that, you know? Whereas if you have someone to help you with that, so you can just focus on your performance, that's gonna help you overall. So for a lot of people, that's the first help they bring on even before a booker.
Okay.
You know? Yeah, and every artist should be signed up with either BMI or ASCAP or CSAC or one of the performing rights organizations, so that they're getting their performance royalties right off the bat. That's very important, and they all need to sign up with Sound Exchange so that they're getting, you know, their money. That's not something that a label will generally do for an artist. That's something they have to do because it all has to do with the compositions. I mean, we work with Sound Exchange from the master side, but from the artist side, that's all on them.
Got it.
You know, and also like if an artist records a cover, it's the artist's responsibility to, you know, go through Harry Fox and get the mechanicals. I mean, they have to deal with that. We don't deal with that.
Got it. Okay.
You know? So basically anything that has to do with like the composition is the artist. Once it's recorded and laid down on tape and that recording is out there, I mean, that's where the label comes in to take care of what's happening with the recording side of it, the master side.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's very helpful to have that kind of split up so that, you know, nobody comes into it thinking that, you know, record labels do everything for everybody. Because I feel like there was a misconception in the past that like you needed to be signed to a record label to take care of everything for you. No, I
mean, you know, back in the day, like the majors, they would take care of it because they were taking a cut of everything. I mean, you know, and also, you know, the 360 deals that you hear about, those are labels that are taking a cut of everything. So they will take over some administration duties since they're getting money out of it anyway. But we're, you know, we don't do that. I mean, we're just, you know, putting out a record. So we're just focusing on making that record, getting it out there, promoting it, and working with the artist on all the other artist things. But the artist does have a checklist of things that they are responsible for.
Well, that's important to know. I think that's definitely it's good for. It's hard to find, you know, answers to these things in one place anymore. Yeah. Everybody does it differently. Like you said, you guys don't do that kind of 360 thing, but bigger labels might still do that. You know,
and with the caveat that, you know, every label is a little bit different, you know. But another thing we don't do is artists' social media and website. That's all on the artist too. I mean, we will do what we can to advise artists on best ways of fan building. And sometimes part of the team that we'll bring on will be digital services that will help them get their numbers up, you know, get their likes up on Facebook, get them more Instagram followers, get them more spins on Spotify. You know, we'll work with them to bring someone on to help with that, but we won't take over their socials and do it ourselves.
Makes sense.
Or do their website. Yeah. That's another thing that the artist is responsible for.
The artist is responsible for a lot. I can see why it's helpful to have that record label relationship now.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we do have expectations for our artists, you know, that they're going to be a part of the team and they're going to be a team player, you know, and that they're going to get out there on tour whenever they can, as much as they can, and they're going to do what they can to build their fan base, you know, above and beyond what's happening from our side of it. You know, because, you know, we put out a record or a single or whatever, and that has a certain timeline for it. So like if we bring on a PR firm to work a record, I mean, they're only going to work for a couple months. And then beyond that, you know, it kind of falls on the artist to keep that momentum going.
Sure.
And we do certain things in-house. Like we do have a PR person in-house that does things off campaign and whatever, but you know, it's, you know, we're all in it together. And the artist needs to be as committed to their career as we are for them.
So what you're saying is it's not a set it and forget it kind of situation.
Absolutely not. No,
that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah. And we are not above, you know, poking with the stick every now and then to be like, hey, reminder. Yeah.
I mean, I guess there could be situations where there are artists that just aren't really pulling their weight and doing what they're supposed to do. But I highly doubt that happens very often, because I think at the point where someone would be on a record label, they would be enough far into their into that career that they're serious about it, so probably doesn't happen very often.
I mean, things happen, people's situations change, but in my experience, when that has happened with an artist, there's been a reason for it.
Right.
They're not just suddenly waking up one day and being like, okay, I'm done, I'm going to be a slacker now. I mean, there's usually like an underlying reason for it, and then you figure it out and you work through it. You figure out a way around it, and if at that point, sometimes the artist will say, no, they need to do something else, in a different direction, or take time off or whatever, then, it happens sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what is the best way for an artist, or the most appropriate way for an artist to reach out to a record label?
Well, I can start off with what not to do, which is do not leave a random unsolicited voicemail with you playing the track in your stereo really loud in the background. Not that has ever happened to us or anything.
Okay.
Don't do that. In fact, just don't leave a voicemail at all. Just don't do it. Who uses the phone nowadays? Yeah. Don't use Facebook Messenger either. Just don't do it. The most appropriate thing to do is do your research. Mm-hmm. So, if you're an EDM artist, chances are a singer-songwriter label isn't gonna they're not gonna know what to do with you. So if your genre just totally does not fit anything that label puts out, maybe not for you. Mm-hmm. Get to know the label first. Completely random, unsolicited is probably not going to go anywhere unless the label has specifically put out a call. Mm-hmm. Some labels will. They'll put out a call. They'll open up their mailbox for a week just to see what they get. And I always wonder why they do it, but you never know. What works for us is, get to know us first. We're not hard to find. We're at the conferences. We're at South by. We're at Folk Alliance. We're at various industry things. Rachael and I are always out at festivals like Ladybug and other festivals around. We're easy to find, where you can introduce yourself and send us an invitation to go check you out, and come to what we're presenting. It goes both ways. Like, if you want us to come see you at South by, maybe stop by our day party and see what we're doing and meet our folks and get the dialogue going. If you have someone that can do the introduction, let them do the introduction. I mean, our most recent signing was 100% because her manager said, I think you guys would be a perfect fit. But there was 3 years of discussions and getting to know before, the contract was signed. So don't expect it to be something that happens overnight. Not everybody is gonna suddenly get a record deal off of TikTok or whatever,
True.
Yeah, it has to be a two-way street, So I'd say the most important, the most appropriate way is just get to know people, and then do it via email with a proper pitch. Don't ever attach any files. Just send a link to a Dropbox or whatever. But we want to know who you are by the time we do get that email.
Makes sense. No, that's very good advice for what to not do and what to do. To not anger the people you're trying to get a record deal with.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's all about relationships. It's all about relationships.
That's very true. That is very true. I definitely feel that. Now I want to kind of turn a little bit in a different direction. We've kind of just finished talking about all of the record label related things that are appropriate, not appropriate, what you do, all the different things record labels do. Now, obviously, and you mentioned Ladybug Music Festival, which is our all female music festival that we do. We're very big on females in the music industry and empowering them and giving them a platform. So
very important. What you guys do is so important.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it. Yeah.
No, we appreciate your guys' involvement and having, Rachael perform. What was that? Was that 2 years ago?
I don't coming up on 2 summers ago. Yeah.
Well, nothing happened.
Yeah, it was about a year and a half. Yes. Yeah, we did the Milford one. Most recently, we did the Milford one.
Yeah. No, yeah. And it's extremely important to us. And so in light of that kind of conversation, have you as a woman in the music industry ever felt like discriminated against, or that you didn't have as many opportunities or anything like that?
Oh, you mean like every time I've walked into a Guitar Center anywhere in North America?
There you go. There's that.
There's that. Sam Ash is even worse. But all seriousness, I think I've been relatively lucky in that. I mean, at MPress, right now we're all a group of people that uses she and her pronouns. We've had some men in the past, but right now we're all kind of lady power organization, which is fun. We've had our share of meetings with like old school managers who are just, have sort of like, oh, let me tell you how this works, little girl kind of attitude.
I know that one.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I've noticed like the younger guys are less apt to be that way. But, I think the most specifically like misogynist crap I've had to deal with has been on the road actually with sound, like especially sound guys in Nashville. Like this one guy was insisting that I couldn't possibly know how my artist is supposed to sound on stage because unlike him, I did not have my own recording studio in Nashville. And I'm like, really? You're like 65 years old. You clearly have lost all of your high frequency hearing. So I don't want to hear.
That's awesome.
You cannot hear the Beta 87 feeding back in the monitor. Like you were just not capable of hearing that. So you need to just shut up.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's, yeah. I mean, it's hard to, there's so many different types of discrimination too. And it's not, not the typical, everybody always thinks of, like a harassment situation or something like that. But like,
no, and I have to say, I've been very lucky in that regard. And I give my blessings for that every day, because I know I've been in situations where it probably could have been a problem. And so I know how lucky I am as far as that goes.
Now, do you have any advice for females in specific in kind of navigating these kinds of situations?
I mean, I think, and I mean, I say this is something that I work on myself all the time, but you have to own your worth and don't be afraid, like, especially if it's a situation where you're never going to have to deal with this person again. Don't be afraid of them thinking you're a bitch for standing up for yourself. I mean, life's too short. It's like if it's a sound guy and if it's a place where I don't think we're going to end up again, or even if it is, I'm just like, look, I hear this show every night. I know how it's supposed to sound. I'm telling you exactly which frequencies to dial in, dial out. I mean, I know what I'm talking about,
Right.
You just have to own your worth, don't apologize for it. And that is something that I do work on with myself, but I think it's important to keep in mind and try to do. For sure.
No, that's a great piece of advice. That's something I feel like should be written on every woman's mirror. Own your worth. I love it.
Yeah.
It's just a really nice phrase, and it's something you get tattooed on your arm to remind yourself. I don't know.
And the nice flowy font,
Yeah. Exactly. So now the type of job you have, especially the touring side of it all, it can get really insane, I'm sure, and really tough to deal with certain things and kind of keep yourself centered. and focused, and being able to do the work that you're out there to do and not be distracted. Do you have anything you do or routines you do on a day-to-day basis that help you kind of collect yourself and keep you going forward?
Yeah, I mean, my previous life was in project management, client management, and I'm a Virgo. I'm like really anal retentive, so my whole thing is just organization, and having lists everywhere, and having information always accessible no matter where I am. So I use Evernote, and I have that on every device, and so I can access my to-do lists from anywhere, and I keep everything together. And I like, especially if we're getting ready to go on tour, I just have lists of things that I have to do by a certain time. And every day when I start off, I'm looking at the list like, okay, what absolutely has to be done today? You got to know how to prioritize, because you're not going to be able to do everything at once. So you prioritize, like, okay, if this doesn't get done today, then I'm really screwed. So I've got to do that, even if that's the only thing I do today. And try to just knock one thing off your list in a day. If that's all you can handle, especially these days, I mean, that's a victory, but just organization. I mean, and I personally never delete an email unless it's like, I keep the most recent one in a thread, but like, just the other day I had to dig something up from 2012. I mean, you never know.
You never know. I do the same thing, honestly.
And it doesn't cost that much to buy more space on Gmail. So
it doesn't,
No,
you're right.
Yeah. But mainly for me, it's just organization, having all my stuff in one place, and just having it's really clear in my mind, like what needs to be done today.
Got it.
And everyone has their own ways of dealing with things, but for me, that's really what works. So.
Okay. Fair enough. So what one, this is the same question I asked to everyone that I interview. What one thing would you tell yourself, your younger self, knowing what you know now, to be able to get to where you are faster, more efficiently, or with less headaches?
I would probably tell myself to spend less time hanging out with the theater majors and spend more time at the radio station. Actually get involved with the running of the radio station and get involved with the campus student activities committee. Because I think if I had those perspectives, 5 or 6 years earlier than I did, I would have made some different decisions. Like a music business degree didn't exist when I was in college.
Right.
That those programs started like right around the time I was getting out of college. I don't know if I would have gone that way, even if they did, but I definitely would have, if I could go back and do it over again, I would spend more time with like the student activities and the radio station, just to give myself more of a grounding in that ahead of time.
Cool. I think that having that kind of perspective is important, and I always find it interesting just to know what people, is it more of a moment in time that you would have done something different, or is it more of a kind of attitude change, or just don't give up on yourself? I get so many different answers for that question. That's why I love asking it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do kind of think that that's really as far as my career goes, that's pretty much like the main thing that I would go do over. Yeah.
Cool. So obviously you have MPress Records, and you have kind of your own social medias, and for Rachael Sage and everything. Do you want to break all those down so people can find you, or MPress, or Rachael, or whoever?
Sure. Well, if you go to MPressRecords.com, it's MPRESS records.com. That's how they have all the we have all the information there on how to contact the label, and you can get to Rachael's information from there with all her contact. And she's Rachael, Rachael Sage. So all of her info is there. I mainly use Twitter for business stuff, social stuff, and that's just at MPress Meredith, MPressMeredith. That's the easiest way to reach me. I'm kind of addicted to Twitter. I'm on it all the time. I'm not so much into Instagram, and I've been trying to limit my time on Facebook lately. So Twitter's pretty much the one.
Gotcha. Perfect. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really had
thanks for having me.
Conversation today.
Yeah, it was just fun. It's good to talk to you.
Cool. Well, I want to thank obviously you, but I want to thank everybody else watching. If you like what you saw, go ahead and put some comments below, smash the bell, do the liking thing. Let us know if we covered everything you wanted covered, any other questions you have. Do you have any ideas for anybody else you want us to interview? We really just want to bring you closer to the people that can help you get to your career goals faster as musicians. So you let us know. We want to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.